We have now launched the online Shockwave course. When I set the company up, which is over 12 years ago now, which is hard to believe, I was always about educating the clinicians as well, not just in terms of the technology. So when Dom Smith came to me with this idea of doing the Shockwave course, I was all for it. And Dom and Katie have done a fantastic job of putting it together. It's really impressive, really comprehensive. It is technology agnostic, so whatever system you're using will be able to help you with this. So it's a brilliant piece of work. The guys have done really well. So check it out and go to the link below and let us know what you think. Hello, and today I'm joined by physiotherapist and chair at Physio First, Katie Knapton. Katie, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Andy. Nice to see you.
Good. Thank you for giving up your lunchtime to spend some time with me. So I appreciate that.
No problem. Always a pleasure.
Now we were just talking about being hectic and things like so. How do you find it? You've got a load of different things that you work on. You're taking on this big task at Physio First. How do you manage your time, switching off, work-life balance, all of these buzzwords and phrases that are talked about?
Oh God, yeah, I really struggle with buzzwords and things, isn't it? They're really a bit annoying to me, but I like being busy is the answer. And therefore I like other people who like being busy. So, if you have a lot similar mindset, then I think we tend to work well together, and you tend to attract people like that. So in terms of work-life balance, I wouldn't say I've got it sorted at all. And actually I sort of bring it on a little, but I do a lot of gym. So might not look like it, but I have a gym very near me. I'm very lucky. I can just literally walk across the road, and so I do quite a lot of strength conditioning, and so I did a HIIT class this morning, and hoping to get into another high rocks, which I also enjoy doing. So I guess quite heavy duty fitness is my distraction, and walking my dog. So I do have my switch offs, but rest of the time I like doing a variety of things, whether that physio, but quite often physio related, if not direct physio.
What's High Rocks like?
High Rocks is mad. It's
She loves
absolutely
it.
mad. Well, so to me, it's a great combination because as a lady of a certain age, we do know that we need to push the strengthening. And so as a physio, obviously, I'm always talking about, strengthening. No, not a 1 kilo weight. We're talking about significant strengthening. And to me, High Rocks isn't quite as mad as CrossFit, quite. But it has a nice cross section of strengthening, endurance, cardiovascular. So and also it's just good, isn't it, with any training routine to have something to aim for, some sort of goal. Having been a physio for a long time, I am afraid I am very smart goal orientated, and so everything has to have an outcome and achievement. And I think it's always good to be trying to aspire to something. I've got some other tricks in the gym that I want to work on, but High Rocks tends to be a good goal to work towards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw that the world record holder was a physio as well. You
Oh,
see
really?
that? Yeah,
Oh,
so
no, I'll have to
she's
look that
based in
up.
Manchester. So it's Sinead Bent is her name. I just saw her on there and I saw she works there. So thought that was interesting. And yeah, it does look like a very taxing and impressive and very well marketed business.
Oh, it is a bit of a cash earner, but hence I mean I certainly won't enter too many of them, but I just like the basis of it to do a training, and then yeah, it works from there. I tend to do it with a partner, so it's actually fun. I don't take it too seriously in terms of timings, but I do tend to end up doing most of the burpees though. But that's fun.
So how did you get into physio?
Oh, God, so long ago, Andy, when you were a wee baby, if that. I had a godmother who was a theatre sister, and she organised a day that and I'd always had a thing about medical books. I collected old medical books for some reason. I never sort of talked about being a doctor, and which everyone thought was lucky as I wasn't academic enough. But I definitely thought about nursing. So she sent organised a day that I went to the local hospital. Part of that day was in the physiotherapy department. So after I'd done the nursing things, which, were fine, I ended up in the physiotherapy department, and I saw people being rehabilitated. I saw lots of different presentations, and I went, that's that then, sorted. And that's what I decided at 13. And really, I think thinking about it harder and having had children of my own, I think I just got fed up with people asking me what I wanted to do. And as I said, well, I quite enjoyed that. I decided to stick with it. And I am a bit of a stickler. So once I've decided something, I tend to stick with it. And I thought it's as good as anything. And yeah, so I decided at 13 and I never changed.
Wow, that is incredible then. So would you geared everything in terms of what the GCSEs and all of those things is like
Oh
to?
yeah, yeah. I won't tell you how old I am. That GCSEs perhaps weren't there. Yes, yes. And I was told at one point that I wouldn't be able to get into it because I had to do chemistry, and they hadn't let me do chemistry because I was obviously not delayed, but a bit slower in maturing academically. And so I did chemistry in a year, and because I was so determined, yeah. So it was again, it gave me a focus, it gave me a goal, and I achieved, yeah, so to get in. But it wasn't quite as academic then, I might add. It was easier to get in.
Well,
I probably wouldn't get in now.
what do you think about that then? Because I think it is really academic now, and there is questions over is it too academic? Are we losing some of that personal touch?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it is an issue, isn't it? But that's why I'm quite delighted to see that apprenticeships and that way in is becoming more achievable for people. So that if you're working as a physio assistant, you can have a day release. And, I think in some respects, moving forwards, that will be helpful because I think we haven't quite worked out. We know that there's a lot that drop out actually from the physiotherapy profession, but still remain HCPC registered, and we don't know why. And I'm wondering whether some of it actually they don't necessarily like that human contact that is required and that personal nature of the intervention, and it's seen more as a degree because there's the academia behind it. But I don't know. But yeah, I'm pleased with apprenticeships, and I think that gives a huge opportunity for people who perhaps do not feel or haven't had, been enabled enough to reach the standards that they need to get into a degree course, that they can actually, go into profession and make a difference. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the people that we can help.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's so many people I've chatted to on here and out and about and so on, is that there's so much other stuff. It's getting so academic now that I think these other options. I'm a massive believer in the apprenticeship type thing. I was certainly a late developer in terms of just being interested in doing something. That's the main thing, isn't it? It's that aptitude and belief that you can do something. So those other routes in, I think, are really important.
Yeah, no, and I totally agreed. And when I trained way back when, the course was very much more practically based. So you'd be in college in the morning and in the hospital in the afternoon. The second and third years of physiotherapy, then you virtually, with the student nurses, you were running the wards. And I probably, if it is like it is now, I wouldn't have probably gone in for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was more like an apprenticeship. So it's sort of everything goes when you've been around long enough, feels a bit full circle, doesn't it?
So where did you study at then?
Kings in London. Because you trained in London in those days, you had to, couldn't train anywhere else.
Yeah, and so in terms of like the other people that were on the course with you, then that's what have they gone on to do? Like you were still in touch with many of the.
Well, interesting enough, I did someone that I trained with. He was a little bit older. I just picked up an email that came into Physio First because he's retiring, and I said I sent him a rude message. But so he's retiring. We had one who went on to be an orthopedic surgeon, who I think is based in Scotland. We got some teachers, teaching physiotherapy, and we got some other private practitioners. So there's a mix. Most have stayed in physiotherapy, I'm pleased to say, but I can't say I've kept up with all. And we are thinking that we might have to do a reunion at some stage.
Yeah, no, you definitely should do that. That'll be good because you've gone on to do loads of interesting things. Like, what was your thought process in terms of the roles that you were going to do when you started out?
Well, actually, I did a very boring, traditional, ordinary beginning. So I did what everybody did in those days, which we don't necessarily do now. So I did the rotations. So went into NHS hospital, did my 4 monthly rotations for a couple of years, went traveling, worked in Australia as a physio for a bit. So came back with no debt, which was good. And then ended up at St George's doing what was then senior role and then an extended scope role. And came out of the NHS now about 20 years ago. Oh gosh, where did that time go?
So yeah, when you came out then, what was the thought process? How did that come about?
I was doing serious stuff like bringing up babies and things like that. So I was working part-time. So I worked in other people's clinics for a bit and then set up my own sole practitioner clinic and basically was pottering along quite happily at that until I suddenly realized my children were quite grown up and I probably had a bit more that I could do potentially later on.
So, I mean, one of the interesting things is that for my time working in this area, when I started working for in this sector, it's like 18 odd years ago now, is that 80% of the work that I did with technology and that side was in the NHS, and it was really focused around that. That's where the money was. Whereas seen a massive shift now where 80% of our time is really spent in the private practices. Sport has always been quite a big one because they've had budgets and they're always looking for technology. But how have you seen that in your time and certainly in your new role now in terms of that shift to private practice, private healthcare, being more, I suppose, maybe spending more money on things and being forward thinking?
Well, I mean, what have I seen? So I've now been in private practice for 20 odd years. And actually had a very low tech approach to my locality because I worked very much in a semi-rural environment. So I was, treating generations of patients. And yes, I recognise, the best I would have was, checking their grip strength and things like that and doing some balance stuff. And I think only more latterly have I become more interested in health innovation and the role that that can play. So much so I did do an Imperial College course on it. I forgot that. So I'm really highly keen to engage, but I also need to keep it realistic. So, I mean, I use a lot of AI stuff that would help any management stuff and or help any clinic associated things. I will use any software that helps with potentially patient adherence to exercise programs or makes it easier for them to understand, but also recognizing that different patient groups need different things. So although I'm excited about where things are going and there's some phenomenal stuff out there. There's lots of work, isn't there, on those motion sensors and things. But again, it's working out what is relevant and which crowd, because different sectors need you need personalized care. So we're never going to get one digital tool or one magic bullet that is going to sort everything out for everybody. And as I said, I treat a spectrum of patients. I treat, from 8 years old up to my oldest was probably 101 and he'd been a bomber pilot. So, it's a real mix. And I think that gives me quite a lot of insight of different abilities. And I've done sports in the past and rugby and etc. But I think you need to know what's out there and what's relevant. And obviously you take to your practice what's relevant for you. I mean, there is, as you say, there's lots of stuff, but just because it's new and shiny doesn't always mean it's appropriate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was in an event last night talking about this, and this was someone who worked in a prominent sports science university where they do a lot of evidence-based stuff. There's a lot of technology, and there's so much stuff out there that you could be doing. You've got companies like us, like other ones that are talking about what they're doing, and I can imagine it really is overwhelming. And it's all you can do X, you can get this much data points, all of these things, and it's like, well, yeah, sounds quite good. Then how do you practically do it? What do the clients think of it? How do you pay for it? All of these things. It's quite confusing, I think, in terms of the different options on stuff.
Well, yes, because I mean, as part of my role as chair on Physio First, I also sit on the PPF committee, which is a private physiotherapy educational fund. So they sit on quite a large budget that we give for any innovations or interventions or anything that promotes physiotherapy or enhances the quality of life of patients from a physio input. So we do get to see quite a lot of these amazing things that come up, these science-based something that's measuring whether someone's balancing more on one leg or, some really quite minutiae and potentially interesting. But then we need to look at it. How does that reflect in the real world? What difference to someone's quality of life is it really going to make? And then we have to question, because you have to think about, if you're going to invest in something, it's got to make a difference. So we have to turn down quite a lot of interesting things, but just because actually it's just of interest to the researcher, but not necessarily going to make any difference to anyone's life. So yeah, but it's good to be aware. I agree. You know, I think we need to be informed. So I like to be informed. So, you know, I refer patients maybe for shockwave. I refer them for injections. I'm not desperate to do any of those things, but I'm happy that I know when it's indicated and when it would be appropriate. So I think, you know, you need to keep updated. You need to be aware. You have a duty of care to your patient, obviously, that you're guide them right down the right pathway, and you're not just saying, well, this worked with someone else. It's got to be, you know, why you're sending them somewhere, and you can reason it, and you've clinically thought about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like to your point on technology, it's like we engage with a lot of manufacturers and so on. And the inventor, I've taken them into meetings, and they are, you cannot tell them their product is not amazing. It's
No.
they're going to be doing that. I've had some really interesting conversations, and when I say interesting, probably not great ones. But it's fascinating, and it's great that you see so much innovation, and yet, like you say, it's got to be real world. It's got to have an impact for everyone involved. So, in terms of like for your sort of getting involved in these things, like you've been involved in a few other things around the industry. Where's that drive from you come from doing that?
Well, as I said, I sort of sat in my sole practice for quite a while, and then decided I was a little frustrated. I think it was by misinformation. I mean, I am by far not alone and not the first to be disappointed in what people find from Dr. Google. And also knowing that, you know, there's a lot of really skilled clinicians out there, and spending quite a lot of time advising friends on what they should do, when they should seek a consultant referral, and all of that sort of thing. I thought, well, where do people go? And that's when I set up my online physio clinic. So that was Physio via video, where I, you know, the idea was that, of course, I'd have a group of really skilled clinicians that people would be able to access. And you need to bear in mind, this was pre-COVID. And again, I was not the first. I might state that there are, you know, plenty of others who've done it before, but I was naive enough to think that would be easy. I was lucky. I did do some pitching, so I did get investors, and I have still got investors because that company is still going, and I'm still working to develop it further. And I guess that sort of started me, really. When I think about it, then I recognized that actually I was quite capable of doing a little bit more than I was doing. So I've worked on that since 2016, and that carries on, and we carry out a few contracts at the moment. We've got a contract with Serco for their justice and immigration staff, and we're hoping to evolve from there with a few other bits. And then I think from that gave me some confidence, and also gave me a bit of prominence, although I had some grief initially when I started. So, you know, some of the manual therapists didn't like what I was doing. My argument is I actually, you know, don't care how stuff is delivered as long as the patients get the information they need and they go away knowing where they're going and what they're doing and why they're doing it. Not just 10 exercises just because that's the exercises they give for that back pain. So it's that personalized approach that was still and is still my motto. So it's quality in terms of the patient knows what they should know. So that's carried on. And I think from that is how I started my communication with Physio First. I'd always been a member because in my day you just did that. And from there I got interested because physiotherapists, you know, we are still mainly trained not on business skills. And what Physio First is to support physio-led and physio-run practices. And I see, you know, the idea is that we try and take the pressure off them so that basically the patients get the best, because my passion is still the patients. I sit very much within my community and, you know, feel really strongly that, you know, we need to support these people through. I don't want to treat everybody. When people go, oh, I'm really sorry I didn't come see you, I'm not worried. Did you get the information you needed? Are you getting better? And if you're not, why not? And can I help? Or can I advise where else you should go? So, and that is my same thing for the physio. You know, we have an organization that anyone can send, who's a member can send in any question they have, and nothing's too stupid. Because, you know, where else can you ask confidentially? So we get emails daily, loads of emails with just some quite interesting and varied questions that we can supply and just give them that reassurance and backup, and everything's checked, so we know that we're giving them the right information.
And in terms of like the answering those questions, like where does that, what data bank, or how do you support them with that stuff? Because I can imagine you do get a load of varied ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, Physio First has been running since 1952. So we've probably got quite a lot of information and data, and we've also got a lot of trusted partners that we can reach out to if we need further clarification. But we have got a huge data bank of relevant information. Easy click of a mouse these days, isn't it? So it's all there, and if not, we reach out to experts in the field where we possibly can. I mean, obviously, some people do then need to go on and get their own personal advice, but we can at least give a starting point.
Yeah. No, no. And you mentioned a bit earlier on about being really excited about where the profession is going, can go in that private space. Like, what are you particularly excited about, or where do you see it going in the next few years?
Well, I think we've got a huge opportunity. I think everyone likes. I mean, I'm a bit of a half full, so I think it's exciting. I think what is sometimes lacking is that sharing of the breadth of physiotherapy that we do from cradle to grave, and taking in everything. We aren't just MSK. We do frailty, we do balance, we do pediatrics, we do respiratory, we do neurology. And as predominantly an MSK practitioner, I can touch point on all of those things because I have some knowledge. I can then guide to a specialist, but I think we need to recognize that we have that holistic approach, or we should have. I'm working with prison officers, for example, so we talk about sleep, we talk about the stresses having working excuse me, night shifts can be, and then readdressing that. We talk a little bit of nutrition. I'm not an expert, but I can give the basics. I think it's recognizing that we have got that holistic view that we can recognize and change and make a difference. And it's that preventative piece that if we're not. So I've had conversations. They've gone, no, well, you can just have a physio assessment in 10 minutes. And I go, no, it's about a relationship. So someone might have sprained their ankle, but is it because they got a bad knee on the other side? Is it because they were tired, because they were at the end of their shift? It's a bigger picture, isn't it? And I think that's where physio can really come in. And think in terms of the general population. So if we go away from those specialized sports things that everyone's more excited to talk about, but if you talk about actually getting to the nitty gritty and making a difference, I think that's where physiotherapy can really excel.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think a lot of people do go straight to that sports piece. That is the glamorous bit. That is the bit that people associate with. If you're going to be a
It's
physio,
sexy.
you're going to be, you're working in the Premier League, or things like that. Whereas it's a massive scope with things as well. And do you see that is that whole sector? Do you see it growing within like that Physio First arena? How have you seen it change in the time that you've been a member or in it?
Well, we are seeing a change in membership. So what used to be predominantly MSK clinics are changing. So we're getting more community members who are addressing, unfortunately, the NHS is overrun, and there is a place for the health care sector and market is changing all the time. And there is definitely, people are more prepared to pay for treatment because it won't happen necessarily in NHS, or they choose to have it with who they want to have it with. So it is growing, and our membership is definitely changing. So as I said, we're getting more community, more pediatric physios, we're getting more neurology physios registering with us. So we're getting a lot of areas that we wouldn't necessarily have had so many of sort of 30 years ago in the private sector. So it is changing, and actually good, because people need to be able to. So we talk about patient choice, and patients need to have informed choice. And part of that choice is they can get treatment from private clinicians. And I think, and there's a wide variety. And if they're not getting what they want, then they can choose to go to someone else who will give them what they want and hopefully what they need as well. So, I mean, there is, a little bit pro quo stuff.
Yeah, like because it's I suppose it's changed as well as that sports therapy, sports rehab, relatively new professions, still been going for quite a while now. But where do you see that going? Because I think there is a big growth in private, but then these guys are more MSK focused and so on. Do you see what do you see the opportunities and collaborative opportunities with that profession?
Well, this is where I probably might upset some of my physio, is that it's about that clinician themselves at the end of the day. And I think, I mean, I've referred some of my ACLs once I've done some initial work with them to a sports therapist. I don't have a problem with that because they can do the high level rehab that I might not do in my sole practitioner clinic. And also then they can work with them there. So I refer some of my patients to an osteopath. I know, I'm not actually too worried. It's the clinician themselves that I'm more interested in. And I see that there should be a collaborative piece. 30% of the population have an MSK problem. So there's plenty of work to go round. I think where physio strengths are is that holistic piece. And we're not going to talk about the hands-on, hands-off because I do video consultations, but that touch piece is important. And that obviously goes across quite a few different professions. But if a patient comes to see you as a physio, as I teach students, for goodness sake, touch them. They're the power of that touch, whether it is just to say you recognize the pain they're in, the problem they've had, the history, etc. It makes a difference. But if they come into your clinic, I just say, for goodness sake, fully assess them and do touch them when it is appropriate. So I actually say it slightly stronger than that, but I'm being polite. I've decided I'm going to be polite today. But, there is room for all of us. And it's recognizing where our strengths are. And I think physiotherapy has a huge place and a growing place. I think sports therapy also have a place, and I have no snobbery about it. I'm not worried about it. But what I do think that should be more recognized is that wide breadth that physiotherapists have. And I know some physiotherapists decide to specialize on one joint or the other, and that's absolutely fine. But a majority of us can become, specialist generalists, which I've talked to someone about before. I was quite boring about it. But, I'm not a women's health physio, but I will happily talk incontinence, menopause, postnatal stuff because I've done courses, I know about it. If they then need specialist help, I will send them on to a specialist. But why can't they have that first point of call with me? In fact, they need to, because quite often they present with back pain and actually then realise that they've got a completely weak pelvic floor that actually they've never thought of addressing or never thought of being relevant to their back pain, when quite often it is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it is a fascinating area, and it's interesting to see that all of those other non-MSK ones are really growing and thriving as well. Because I think MSK is talked about quite extensively, and certainly from a neuro perspective, we're seeing some really big things developing on that. And I've got some colleagues in the States, and that's a massively growing area there.
Well, Parkinson, isn't it? Parkinson in itself, it's the increased incidence is huge. So, if I treat someone with Parkinson's who happen to have, shoulder pain, I can't, I need to look at this in a joined up way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that for you taking on that role, like, did you have any reservations before taking on the role of Physio First? Like, how have you found doing that? Because, like I say, it's been going for a long time, and there's a lot of strong personalities in the physio world. How and why did you take the role?
Oh, yeah. This is when I say I was slightly groomed. It's not a role I ever thought I would take, if I'm honest. I had conversations with them during COVID when they were hugely supportive to their membership. And they obviously came in and asked me because I've been doing video consultations for a while, and obviously that was quite relevant during COVID. So I then continued the conversations. And to be honest, I was really impressed because what isn't recognised is there's a lot of hard work that goes on. So it's beyond just those membership touch points. There's a lot of conversations with the CSP and wider than that. It doesn't necessarily always mean that we come up with anything particularly exciting or to change the physio world, but those conversations are being had. People are making stands. So I was really impressed. And I suppose I got to the point of, well, why wouldn't I? Rather than, so it wasn't yes, 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 but it's, well, why not? Why not? If not now, well, what else am I going to do? And I was keen. Yes, I thought it was a good time for me and a good time for Physio First to perhaps have someone who hasn't been quite so involved in it to come in and make that difference.
And when you're talking to the people that are involved in it, then do you formulate a vision? Like how do you come up with that, where this is going or what the aspirations are?
Well, yeah, no. So and we've just done a new vision. Well, don't test me on it though. So we do usually have a vision and stuff that we're aspiring to. So there's always a plan. And that's why it actually is an impressive organization, because it has always had some underlying, basis from which they work from. It's not just, lick your finger and see which way the wind's blowing. It is an organization that has really firm foundations on how its plan is, how it wants to look, how it wants to be viewed. And I don't want to take anything away from that, but running an organization that is, based on a membership model is hard in these days. We have younger generations coming up who have no real interest in being associated with an organization or don't see the relevance. So I think my picture is really to try and sell that relevance, that we are relevant, and then actually just putting a question out there in some Facebook page or or Googling it actually perhaps isn't enough. Perhaps you need validated, trusted, perhaps you need to be in a network of physios that are all like-minded and trying to move forwards. And I want Physio First to be that relevant organisation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant aspiration. It's a big job, isn't it, as well, to do that. So, like, what can you share any plans as to how you think that can be done?
Right. Well, I'm hoping we've made some steps towards that. So we've just brought in clinic membership, and then part of that clinic membership, you and your team get access to Physio Matters. So although, we are predominantly business and day-to-day running advice and support, and we have a lot of strategic partners, we do recognize that physiotherapists are clinicians at heart, and they all like CPD. So everyone wants CPD, and you need to supply your team with CPD. So that was a way of ticking that box. So it's a one-stop shop. Within that, we've got our own our own specific Physio First Physio Matters platform, from which we put our webinars and any information and advice and also on that. So there's a lot of learning materials that are accessible, but also hopefully will appeal to people who haven't really thought about us before.
Yeah, no, I think it's really good, and Jack's really prominent with the stuff that he pushes out there, and it's a good voice in the industry for what they're doing. And in terms of like your drivers, like I'm a massive believer in like you do stuff that you enjoy doing and that you focus on doing those bits. You're got great energy and you're like really enthusiastic about putting these forward. So for you to have a good day, what would a good day look like for you where you think, right, that was a cracker?
Oh, well, most days are good day, isn't it? When people, I don't know whether they just say yes because you've gone on and on at them, but it's getting people to recognize. So as I said, one of my passions at the moment is that informed choice piece. That we need people to recognize that they can access correct care. So my good day is so in the clinic, it's obviously just having that day where you get a patient that's really improved and that has reached or beyond the goals that you set together. So that's my win. The wins bigger are just getting some recognition, getting some opportunity to voice how strongly I feel that people need support and help. And that's both from the physiotherapist point of view, but also from the population. I mean, I think part of what I'd say my problem is I am still very much a clinician. So part of my sales in terms of my online video platform is that I feel it from a patient point of view. So I'm always standing up. I'm that sort of patient advocate. If they're not getting good enough care, then, why not? Why are we not shouting about this? Why are we not writing about this? So I think so I can't think what a good day is, because I haven't quite got there to where I'd really say that I've achieved. Because there's always striving, there's always more, there's always people suffering that you feel you should be able to help, or at least try and put in the processes to make it better. And I know I can't, change everything, but I'd like to change a lot more than I have yet.
Yeah, well, like I say, there's a lot to be done, which is really exciting, and it is great to have someone with such drive and enthusiasm that's steering it forward. And I think you are really prominent in the market, so I think it's really good for Physio First to be visible, and the fact that you're talking about these things, which is great. And that's sort of on that point, we talk about the business aspect of things, and there's a lot of things that are said sometimes of clinicians. Yeah, they're clinicians, they're not business people. And my question is, when I started my business, I didn't have a clue really. What I had no idea, didn't know about VAT or anything. So I think that is thrown around a lot. What's your experience of the practices? And I know there's going to be a broad spectrum, but of people understanding business, whatever that means.
As you say, there's a huge. So we have people who are, running multi-clinic, multi-site, 20, 30, physios working for them, and they're fairly well versed. But we've also got those really beginning people, and some of the naivety and the lack of awareness is slightly concerning, which is why I'm delighted that we can help them. But there are still a lot of people who are not aware of what they should have in place or what they need to think about. So there's still a lot of people that need some help, which we happily do. And we partner we've got Celia Champion and we got Katie Bell, so as strategic partners who also offer their insight. And we're just about to start running courses to help people in private practice as well. So Celia and I are in London in March, I think, and we're planning to do those nationwide, just to really check that people know what it's about. I could have done with it when I started, to be honest. I was fairly green.
Yeah, I know, but I think everyone can. It's like, again, I've been doing my business 13 years, and I'm part of an external business group, and I think you never crack it. You never fully know what you're doing. So I think having that continual support and network is so crucial. So I think it's really important also to get yourself out of your working environment. Like if you're in your business all the time, you need to get out and get a fresh perspective, just to give yourself a break for one.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's right. And it's part of when I set up my video consultation, I was in a business accelerator as well, which was fascinating. So working with other startups, not necessarily health related at all, was really enlightening for me, and a real change of scene. And, we were practicing all our pitches. It was hilarious. And in fact, I was on I wasn't on Dragon's Den, but I heard Dragon's Den, and I was thinking, I know that pitch. And it was someone that I'd helped write her pitch. She didn't get funding, by the way. Anyway, but, so all of, I think also just being open to opportunities. So that's thinking, beyond all of this, as I said, I'd never see myself as a chair of anything, to be honest, all slightly surprising. But, being open to opportunities and never actually turning anything straight down. So always take time to consider, because actually on reflection, you may think, well, why not? So that is much more my attitude now. When my children were smaller, I didn't have that opportunity, but now I really do. Be careful of women in their 50s, I think. But everything's an opportunity to me now. So there's very few things I'm scared of, and whether that's because I've matured, I don't know. But I'm really quite, happy to have a go and put myself forward. I recognise my flaws, and there's plenty, and we won't go through them, but I'm also really excited I like change. I like new things. I like to learn. And that's one of my flaws is, my FOMO. So I am a member of many organizations because I can't quite decide why I wouldn't be. So, But I think being open to opportunities, recognizing what's available. So certainly in the business world, loads of localities have growth hubs. There's free access to lots of business information on top of what you may need that's more specific to physiotherapy or health or whatever you're doing. But that recognition of you are valid to go and apply for these things. Because I think when I started out, I thought, oh, well, it doesn't count with me because I'm just a physio and I'm just working from home in my own clinic, but it's relevant for all of us. If you're running any sort of business, have a look at what's out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I think it's that is really good advice. And just to add on to that, what would you say to the people that say maybe looking at starting a business or just started a business, or even people that have been established for a while? What would your advice be, whether it's Physio First related or not?
I think it's always taking that step back, isn't it? Because as you say, if you're also the clinician working in it or one of the clinicians working in it, it's very easy that you just get slightly drawn down by that day-to-day process and you can't see the bigger picture. So it's always just that stepping away. I'm trying to avoid saying helicopter view because it's all a bit naff, but we'll say it. And just seeing, what can you change? What can you improve? And I have had quite a number of physios going, oh, well, I don't like AI and all that. And you're just like, no, be open. Be open. You don't need to use it in your direct patient, stuff, but actually a lot of that management stuff, a lot of the streamlining your processes. I mean, I knew nothing about APIs and Zapier or any of that, but I have learned, there is so much out there to help us to make life easier, but sometimes you need to take that step back, draw a breath and have a think about your processes, your pathways, your flows, and see what is out there relatively cheaply. And don't throw your money into big courses and things like that. There's a lot of things that are usually simpler and easier to employ to make a difference.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I think that's really good advice. So yeah, no, thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how everything goes for you in with the organization. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thanks. That's been interesting, I think.
No, it's been great. Thank you, Katie.